Hey everyone, once again I've made another list. This time we'll be ranking all the cards that give the player active abilities from worst to best. This won't mean every active ability however. This will only be ranking attacks and abilities you can equip, so no basic ball or sword attack, as those are equipped by default, and no cards from the other or special categories. This video will be subjective and is not a definitive list. If there's anything you don't agree with, let me know in the comments. If this video gets enough attention, I'll do a second part covering all the passive cards you can equip. With that said, let's get straight into the video. SP Wire. Despite costing 0 BP to equip, it's usually worthless most of the time. All you do is trade 5 of your own SP to give to someone else. You can just use something as simple as Bloxy Cola on your turn, which doesn't cost SP to use. This is only useful if you have no such SP items left, but at that point, you want to save your SP. May as well cover both of these at once. Enchanting your weapon to hit one enemy for some damage over time is just a worse version of charge in every way possible. More enemies have immunity to burn than poison, but some enemies actually take double damage from burn, like Bubonic Plant and Tree Golem. But you don't even get free fire until chapter 3, making it not that great. Bodyguard can actually be a decent card if you sacrifice some of your SP and BP into making a build for it. Wanna know what's better than absorbing half the damage for a target? Giving that target half damage taken with charge defense. In my opinion, this card just isn't worth making an entire build for, but each to their own, I guess. The only enchant card that in my opinion has some value. Being able to freeze an enemy is quite nice, however Snowball does exist. Remember, these enchant cards take up your turn. Why use this when you can deal damage and apply an effect, right? Freeze also has a low proc chance against most bosses, so good luck with that. Pity SP is similar to SP Wire, being free to use BP wise. Sacrificing 10 HP to gain 5 SP per party member can actually come in handy sometimes. Gaining up to 20 SP party-wide does give you a profit versus the cost, and you gain 5 SP yourself. However, 10 HP is a lot, and this can be a very risky move, so use this with caution. Comatose inflicts sleep on the target, which can be pretty useful and has similar uses to Free Ice, except this is also an attack. However, sleep can also be interrupted by any source of damage, be it direct or damage over time. That, and the proc chance tends to be on the lower end compared to other effects. Overall, an okay card, but there are better options. I can only really think of one use for Sword Toss. If you're using Knight and don't want to use Dynamite on a flying enemy, so you use this instead. It only costs 1 SP, which is nice, but besides that, it's just the basic sword attack except you can hit everything. Alright, but very situational. Good Vibes seems kinda bad on paper, forcing you to sleep and restoring everyone's HP and SP by 2 at the start of every turn while sleeping. But this can be somewhat useful. Fun fact, while you're asleep when using this card, you gain 50% damage reduction, but not being able to guard still makes you take a lot of damage. Not a bad option for the early game, but not recommended later on. Our first summon card, the Gorilla. Costing only 3 SP, this is the cheapest summon in the game. For its cost, its survivability is decent, and is the only summon to be able to be resummoned after being defeated. This is a nice bonus, but summoning 2 of these makes the cost equal to red and blue. That, and the Gorilla's damage is low, only dealing 2 damage on that turn if it's not healing. Overall, a cheap meat shield, but not much else. Snowball is what Free Ice wanted to be, both inflicting the same debuff as well as applying some extra damage all in one turn. The SP cost is a little high compared to other moves like this, but Freeze is a pretty solid effect. This isn't to be relied on though, as most enemies have slight resistance to Freeze, and most bosses are immune, so use this with caution. Infect, as well as Snowball, can be interchanged. Infect actually has some pretty decent use against stronger enemies, having Sword's defense piercing and doing damage over time. However, Since you can only target the front enemy with this, as well as being unable to hit flying enemies, this card is more situational. Softener is a pretty nice card, being able to reduce enemies' defense, as well as going before other attacks to apply this debuff for other people. This makes this card quite useful. However, like Infect, this can only go for the front enemy, so if they have no defense, this card is useless. This card has good utility, but only against specific enemies at specific points in the fight, which, honestly, is good enough for some people. Fireball is pretty much Infect, but a lot more consistent. It can hit flying, as well as being able to hit enemies behind the front one. This allows you to stack multiple burns, dealing damage over time to multiple enemies at once. Not only that, but being able to deal some damage on a tough enemy while needing to heal helps a lot. Line Bounce in Demo 2 used to be pretty much meta. Not only did it do decent damage with Baller, when using Charge of the free effect cards, it got its full effect on every target. Now, it's a lot more balanced. It can hit only one target with a free effect, and Charge doesn't increase its damage fully. That, and for every subsequent hit, it loses 1 damage, not going lower than 2. Honestly, a pretty solid AoE option still. Charge Defense. Halving damage taken sounds pretty good, right? Well, yeah, it is. In my opinion, this outclasses Bodyguard heavily. Not only that, you can use this solo, and it's rather strong when doing so. Since you're the only target, you will always be susceptible to being hit, so this can produce a lot of damage overall. Even with other players, this can give someone a lot more survivability, really helping in the long run. Prayer is the most random card in the game. I won't list all of its effects, as we will be here for a while. If you're curious, you can check out its page in the Blocktails wiki. Prayer has the potential to heal all your allies, buff everyone, including enemies, as well as giving yourself and all the enemies some negative debuffs. This card is very random, and it costs 5 SP, which is a lot. However, some of its effects are insanely good, making it place around about here. Sacrifice is a pretty nice card, making you take 5 damage per card and healing everyone else in the party for 5 damage per card. If you're confident in dodging or have a lot of HP, this card can be a really solid way to heal your entire team. This card, however, is only really useful when in a team of 4, otherwise its effects aren't nearly as strong. Charge with only a single card isn't usually worth it, but better than free poison or fire typically. You could probably do more damage in one turn than the extra damage you give yourself. 3 cards though? Although it's expensive, if your build doesn't deal much damage, using this on yourself or another person to give them 6 extra damage for their next attack is a huge bonus. You can even combo this with Line Bounce for some extra overall damage, and Cruel King's Scepter Strike to deal insane AoE damage. This card is great, but only in specific situations. Power Shot is pretty nice in combination with Slingshot, giving users an option against targets with defense. Honestly though, it's a worse version of Power Stab. Sure, it can hit any target, including flying, but this costs BP, requires you to use Slingshot in the first place, and against enemies with more than 1 defense, you have Dynamite. A much better option in nearly every way besides SP cost. This card is still good, just slightly outclassed. Blue and Red, till the end. Red and Blue, for 6 SP, have pretty solid damage. This is due to them having agility, allowing them to attack twice, dealing up to 5 damage a turn, 2 at minimum if the target has 3 or more defense. Their problem, however, is survivability. Their HP is decent, however they have no way to recover it on their own. Remember, if they get defeated in a battle, you can't resummon them. Overall, a great summon for their lower cost, but don't expect them to stick around. Launcher is a reliable card, and performs consistently well through the game. When hitting a target with this, they will gain a -1 defense debuff, being helpful for things like Slingshot and itself. But to top it all off, without the defense debuff, it will hit adjacent enemies, dealing up to 3 damage on them too. This makes Launcher a pretty solid AoE option, while also being good for support. The only issue is that it replaces Ball, but it has enough utility to do well on its own. Cure is a really simple card. For 2 SP, you can heal someone for 5 HP, a very solid trade-off, and it gets much better with multiple copies, healing 5 extra HP for 1 extra SP per copy, up to 25 HP with 5 copies. We did get some better healing items in Chapter 4, making this card finally have some competition. However, this card still holds up. Just like Cure, this is a really simple card. Being able to do 1 extra damage may not seem like much, but it can really help against some enemies, and especially bosses. This card is literally free to equip now, meaning there's no reason not to use it. That, and the added defense penetration of Sword, makes this skill really strong. Combine it with SP Saver, and you'll be doing solid DPS every turn. It does fall off in later chapters, but it's still a great card despite everything. Sacrifice Plus is a pretty niche card, yet I brought it up here because of how useful it can be when used correctly. Sacrificing yourself to heal everyone in the party based on your current HP can be a lifesaver. Not only that, if anyone's down when you use this, they automatically get revived too. This card has the potential for the best healing in the game, but at the cost of all your HP. This is actually a great card to use in a group, especially on hard mode. Calypso is next, and honestly, she's pretty decent. Her damage is actually a bit low for her cost most of the time though. Her flintlocks deal 4 damage in total, but since it's 2 shots, any enemies having defense will reduce that rather quickly. Her Cutlass combo is pretty strong though, dealing 5 damage in piercing defense, but is only usable against non-flying enemies. Her main draw is survivability. You will probably die before her. Battlecry restores 10 HP to herself and grants her 50% damage reduction, making her survivability the best out of any summon, and why she's here on the list. Huh, bet you thought this would be at the top, huh? It's my favorite card, yeah, but I think there's better ones out there. Being able to do damage equivalent to Power Stab every turn for 0 SP sounds awesome. However, when an enemy does have defense, you either need to use something that removes that defense, or use something else entirely. This breezes through most of Chapter 3 specifically, but is normally a pretty decent card. Daze I feel is a really underrated card. Being able to hit an enemy with a pretty strong effect, as well as dealing half of that damage to the enemy behind is really solid. In some cases, this will end up dealing even more damage in total than Power Stab. The effect will only hit that front enemy, but Dizzy can make an enemy only act pretty much half of the time, saving you from potential damage. The effect, combined with the extra AoE, makes this card really versatile. Now, Brad is here because of similar reasons to Calypso. His survivability is really solid. He probably has the best stats defensively out of any summon in the game, having high HP and a point of defense for good measure. His triple special deals 4 damage to a target, inflicting poison and piercing all defense, making him a consistent DPS. However, he also has an alternate version of Bodyguard, making him protect a player while also granting himself the Find buff. A summon that can protect the player, in my opinion, is better than a summon that can protect themselves. That's why I think Griefer places higher than Calypso. Minimize is also a pretty underrated card. Against most enemies and even bosses, this has a high proc chance against them. When anything has the small debuff, it lowers their attack power by 2. In some cases, especially when it comes to multi-hit attacks, it will make the enemies unable to damage you. This card is great for survivability because of this. Against enemies that deal a lot of damage in a single attack, although you can't avoid the damage completely, this will help minimize the damage you take. This card is amazing to bring along and is a staple in hard mode runs. Cruel King is probably the strongest summon for one reason: his offensive power. All of the summons have their own uses and reasons to use them over others in specific scenarios. In my opinion though, Cruel King has the best use. His Septismac is nothing to write home about. However, his Septus Strike, this, combined with Charge, is absolutely devastating, dealing up to 9 damage on every enemy unless they are flying with this combo. Even without it, it still deals 3 damage to them, which is nice AoE damage on its own. Did I mention it can freeze for a turn too? He has the best AoE damage in the entire game, but he won't use this move most of the time. Check the wiki to see his attack pattern to know when to buff him. Although his attack is a little inconsistent, it's predictable and without setup can help you just fine in any encounter. Feel Fine is an absolutely amazing card, and I'm sure you already know it. The buff not only prevents you from getting any negative statuses, but gets rid of negative statuses you already have. Being able to be immune to debuffs is already pretty strong in general, but being able to dispel all debuffs in the same action as that? Unheard of. The limit to this card is that it's only single target, but with an effect as strong as this, that barely matters. It's cheap and easy to use, while having a lot of impact, even with a single copy. Okay, who doesn't use this card? Resurrect is probably the most versatile card in the entire game. Although it's 2 BP to equip, being able to save someone from death can really help, especially when the items that do this are rather expensive typically. Not only that, but it has a self-revive passive attached, which if you have the SP you need to normally revive someone when downed, you'll automatically revive yourself once per battle, consuming the SP you would if you were reviving someone else. With 1 copy, this is only 3 SP. You can use this card a surprising amount given its power. This card is probably the most versatile card in the entire game, making it, in my opinion, the best active card in the game. With that concludes the list. Thanks for sticking around this far, it means a lot. I'm also really thankful for the support the last video got. It encouraged me to make this one. I never expected so many people to see and enjoy it, so thank you all. Like I said in the beginning of the video, if this video does well, I'll make a part 2, covering all the passive cards. Doing all of them in one video would take a really long time to make, and to watch. I like to keep these videos condensed. With that, thanks for watching, take care!